Tonight, Arizona bound. The president heads to Phoenix amid a spike in COVID-19 cases in the Grand Canyon state.
When you do more testing, you find more cases.
And across the country. This as protesters and police clash over the Andrew Jackson statue behind the White House. And
they are generals from a prior age.
One former general tells CBN News military leaders speaking out against the president's protest response are wrong. Plus,
you're going to win because God put you here for this occasion.
For such a time as this, our CBN News sit-down interview with President Trump. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Campaign reboot, take two. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm John Jessup. President Trump is in Arizona tonight for his second rally during the coronavirus pandemic, coming just days after what was a disappointing turnout for the campaign in Tulsa.
And as more campaign staffers test positive for the virus. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us with the latest. Ben?
Well, Jenna, John, that rally you guys were talking about will be held at Dream Center Church in Phoenix. It can hold around 3,000 people. This is President Trump's third time visiting the state. The most recent was in May when he toured a mask-making facility.
President Trump boarded Air Force One bound for Yuma as the state battles a spike in COVID-19 cases. The virus even hitting his campaign staff. 6 tested positive before Trump's rally in Tulsa, and now we've learned 2 more staffers who attended the campaign stop in Oklahoma tested positive afterwards.
At the Tulsa rally, when the media is hitting you on that, where you said, I told my staff, stop the testing, they're saying, was that tongue-in-cheek or?
No, it's semi-tongue-in-cheek. I say it all the time. I know some people thought it was tongue-in-cheek. It's unfair. We're doing so much testing, so much more than any other country, and to be honest with you, when you do more testing, you find more cases. And then they report our cases are through the roof.
But just to clear up, there wasn't a direct order, if you will, to staff to stop the testing.
No,
okay.
but I think we put ourselves at a disadvantage.
Arizona Senator Martha McSally traveled with Trump to see the progress being made at our southern border. She recently appeared on Faith Nation with a message of hope as the country faces a surge in infections and the U.S. death toll hitting 120,000.
So let's all work together to allow people to safely work, safely go about their lives while we still fight this virus. We will defeat this virus as we're investing in cures and we're investing in treatments and vaccines, but it's going to be among us. So let's each do our part.
And aside from that rally in Phoenix tonight, President Trump also toured a border fence between Mexico and Yuma and then held a roundtable discussion about border security. John, Jenna?
And joining us now is Rick Klein, political director for ABC News. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
Great to be with you guys.
Well, Arizona is one of the hardest hit states right now, seeing a surge in COVID cases. Do you expect the president to address that tonight?
I think he has to in some way. I mean, it was at that rally in Tulsa where he seemed to claim that he had ordered testing to be curtailed because the numbers weren't so good. The White House walked that back, but then it seemed like he walked back the walk back today. So I'd be surprised if it doesn't come up in some form or fashion. But the president has been trying to show and to tell that we're on the other side of a COVID-19 crisis. And of course, that's not the reality on the ground in Arizona, Oklahoma, Florida, or any number of other states. That is, though, what he is trying to portray. So I can't imagine he doesn't mention that, even though that isn't the focus of today's event.
You mentioned Oklahoma, the rally there this weekend. Today, Dr. Anthony Fauci, in a congressional hearing, warned this pandemic could go on for quite some time and urged all of us to continue to be careful. He did say it's a matter of when, not if, we get a vaccine, which was encouraging. But Rick, when you look at rallies like we saw this weekend or protests, that kind of flies in the face of Dr. Fauci's advice.
Oh, of course. I mean, Fauci was telling people in the run-up that he wouldn't himself go to a rally like that, and he thinks that large indoor gatherings are dangerous. That may have contributed to the sparse crowd, a relatively sparse crowd, I should say. The fact that you had an arena that was basically a third full may have been part of people's concern around this. And whatever the president says about whether people are at risk or where we are in terms of beating COVID-19, we're not done yet. And I don't think people are quite ready. They're anxious. They're eager. I'm sure you guys see this as well. People are eager to resume their lives, but they're not anxious to put themselves in some kind of a harm's way. And I think that's the reality for politics right now. It's the reality that the president has to grapple with.
Rick, I'm surprised that you didn't mention TikTok in that last answer. Now, the president's Democratic challenger, Joe Biden, is joining former President Barack Obama in a virtual event tonight. The Trump campaign made light of how few people are attending Biden events. What do you make of the optics between the crowds at Trump rallies and Biden's few in-person attendees?
I'd make two big points. One is that the vice president is following CDC guidelines when it comes to largely staying at home. When he has had events, there haven't been many, you're right. When he has had events, they've been very, very small. They've had social distancing in terms of the crowd. The other part that I think is worth mentioning is that politically speaking, the vice president's team believes that they're doing better the quieter they stay. They see the president doing himself political damage. The more he's out there, the more he's talking. And frankly, this past weekend's rally, which was an optional thing, the campaign didn't have to have a rally this past weekend, I think proves that point. The president did himself some political damage by appearing out of touch with the COVID-19 crisis, again saying that he was curtailing testing when the officials say that wasn't the case. Why even say that? And I think from the perspective of Biden's campaign, they have seen his electoral chances rise even as he has been less and less visible. I've never seen a campaign like it that actually doesn't want to draw media coverage. That's the reality of Biden day in, day out. They're happy to play on the news cycle a little bit and put out statements and put out tweets, but they don't see a compelling reason for him to be out there day to day.
Yeah. Well, today, Senate hearing on China's role in the coronavirus pandemic. This, of course, after the president called COVID-19 the, quote, Kung flu at this weekend's Tulsa rally. Just about 30 seconds left here, Rick. But is the president's rhetoric complicating U.S.-China relations?
No question. I mean, Peter Navarro, the trade representative, at one point said that the China deal is off, and they had to walk that back yesterday as well. It's, of course, coloring the relationship, and some of the language he uses, including what many would consider to be just a racist term in Kung flu, it isn't helping the relationship with China, and it's a critical one politically. The president very much needs that trade deal to come through for the economy to be back on the mend. All
right, Rick Klein with ABC News. It's always good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
I miss you guys. Great to be with you. Thanks.
Well, tonight, protesters attempting to tear down the Andrew Jackson statue in Lafayette Square outside the White House are facing jail time. Protesters clashing with police last night broke through the fence surrounding the monument to the nation's 7th president, using chains and ropes to bring it down. Jackson was a slave-owning president. Last night's clash, of course, came as the nation grapples over racial injustice after the killing of an unarmed black man in police custody last month.
And now President Trump is preparing to issue an executive order bolstering a federal statute against the destruction of monuments on public property already on the books.
And these anarchists and agitators, and call them whatever you want. Some people don't like that language, but that's what they are. They're bad people. They don't love our country. And they're not taking down our monuments. I just want to make that clear.
And here with us now is evangelist and niece of Martin Luther King Jr., Alveda King, and she is also the Director of Civil Rights for the Unborn for Priests for Life. Dr. King, thank you so much for being with us this evening. You know, to some, Confederate statues like this symbolize Southern pride, culture. To others, though, it's an offensive reminder of a very painful past. Where do you stand, Dr. King?
As a Christian evangelist and one who fights for the sanctity of life, I understand that America and around the world, there are things called high places where we worship idols and all of that. Believe it or not, statues can be idols, and they are placed in high places where we hold human beings in high esteem. For example, the statue of Martin Luther King Jr. In many ways, some would consider that to be an idol. In many ways, I do, in that some people like Martin Luther King Jr., some people don't like Martin Luther King Jr. And there can be a lot of dissension and discussion around his life. And so I had many statues and things in my home, for example, and I began to move those statues out of the house. I want to remove the high places but they should not be removed in the way that this is happening in America. President Trump is right to destroy, tear down, and deface and do all of these actions and hostility is not helping America. We must have law. We must have order. We must have sanity. I was in Tulsa at the rally. The rally was very peaceful with President Trump. There were fewer numbers, but millions of people watched the rally on internet and social media. And so it was an experience of coming back into America. It was a peaceful protest against tyranny. So I thought it was very effective. So I supported the president by going to that rally, one of the first events. Yes.
Dr. King, definitely a lot of passionate feelings around this issue. It feels like the scabs have been rubbed off and we're reliving old painful wounds that never really healed. What do you recommend in this moment where it seems like we're either vacillating between honest dialogue or an explosive confrontation?
I believe that we have to re-examine who and what we've been worshiping in America for many, many, many years. The skin color issue, we are one blood and one human race, not separate races. Many have worshipped money and all of those types of things. But these need to be discussions without violence, without destruction. So I do not support tearing down the statues and throwing them and breaking them apart and tearing up property. I don't support that. But I believe it is time to re-examine America's attitudes about who we really worship. And we actually do worship God. I do, at least.
You mentioned it. You were in Tulsa this past weekend with other faith leaders for the launch of the Council for Racial Reconciliation. Dr. King, tell us more about the work and the people involved.
That particular meeting before we went to President Trump's rally was very powerful. We had people of faith, and it didn't matter about skin color or church denomination or political party. We were discussing the viewpoint of how we can come together. And my point was, we are actually 26, we are one blood, and we can resolve our differences peacefully. And Jesus is our Lord in the Christian faith. So those were some things that we were discussing.
All right, Dr. Alveda King with Priests for Life, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
And coming up, why a former general is calling out fellow military leaders for criticizing the president's law and order approach to protests.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back. Well, by now we all recall President Trump's memorable walk from the White House to a nearby church to pose with the Bible. That incident sparked backlash from a sector of society that's often silent about politics.
Both current and former Pentagon top brass said it was wrong for military leaders to take part in the photo op after using tear gas to remove protesters. But now we are hearing from another military leader who has a different point of view. CBN National Security Correspondent Eric Phillips joins us with the story. Eric?
Well, Jenna and John, that opinion is coming from Robert Spalding, a retired brigadier general with the U.S. Air Force, and he is very blunt in his point of view.
If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
It was statements like that that prompted usually quiet military leadership to begin simmering as the president ordered active duty troops to stand close by. But when peaceful protests were cleared from Washington, D.C. streets so the president could walk to St. John's Church for a photo op, respected military leaders could no longer hold their peace. Trump's first defense secretary, Marine Corps General James Mattis, wrote in the Atlanta magazine, "When I joined the military some 50 years ago, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Never did I dream that troops taking that same oath would be ordered under any circumstance to violate the constitutional rights of their fellow citizens, much less to provide a bizarre photo op for the elected commander-in-chief, with military leadership standing alongside." Former Secretary of State Colin Powell echoed similar sentiments.
We have a Constitution, and we have to follow that Constitution, and the president's drifted away from it.
But retired Brigadier General Robert Spalding says they've missed the mark.
So to put it bluntly, Mattis got it wrong, Colin Powell got it wrong?
To put it bluntly, yeah. They are generals from a prior age.
But even those currently serving said the same thing.
The option to use active duty forces in a law enforcement role should only be used as a matter of last resort and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not in one of those situations now.
So once again, to be blunt, our current Secretary of Defense got it wrong too.
To be blunt, yes.
Spalding says had violent protests continued, he would have supported using the active military because he believes the peaceful protests were infiltrated by others.
That there are foreign nations. They seek to take advantage of that, detract from the peaceful protests that are going on that represent the will of the American people, and understand that the will of the Russians, the will of the Chinese Communist Party are being spread through our internet.
Still, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, publicly regretted taking part in the photo op because he says it's crucial for the military to remain apolitical and to send the message that everyone's constitutional rights matter.
I should not have been there. It was a mistake that I have learned from.
And Spalding says our national security strategy needs to be updated and our intelligence community trained in the new kinds of warfare so that it won't be so easy to cause dissension within American ranks. John and Jenna.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Coming up, more from our CBN News exclusive interview with President Trump when Faith Nation returns.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD, only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
Well, welcome back. More tonight on that wide-ranging White House interview with President Trump we first brought you yesterday. CBN News asked him if he agreed with some evangelicals who say he was chosen by God for such a time as this.
Yeah, the president answered that question in a way that may surprise you.
I've asked Sarah Sanders this, Mike Pompeo, they all give me the same answer. I say, was President Trump put in office for such a time as this? Did God put President Trump in office for such a time as this? I never asked you that question. What do you think?
Well, I don't know what they said.
They said yes.
Okay, because I have had, Ben Carson said the same thing. You know, Ben Carson came to me because he ran a very effective campaign, and he did a good job. He really did. You know, he came in one of the top people, and he said to me, "You know, you're going to win." I said, "Ben, I'm running against you. What are you telling me?" He said, "You're going to win because God put you here for this occasion." I said, what a lovely thing to say. That was the first one that I heard from Ben Carson. And it was during the campaign. I was running against him, and he was saying, I'm going to win. He's a very high-quality guy. He's done a great job in the administration.
Do you buy that? Do you buy what he was saying?
I almost don't even want to think about it, because you know what? All I'm going to do is, I hope it's true. All I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best, and part of what I'm doing my best on is for the religious community, beyond evangelical. Evangelical is a very big part. It's very important to me. You know, we have great support. I was so honored when Franklin Graham said that his father voted for me, and that was something that Billy Graham has never announced who he was voting for. But Franklin Graham said his father voted for him. He went public with it, as you know. To me, that was a big moment, because I have such respect for Franklin and for the family, and Billy Graham is Billy Graham, right? But when he said that his last vote was for me, and his father never announced who he was voting for, would never talk about it. No, I think I have great support. There's a lot of hidden support. People in our country that don't riot, that don't protest, that don't, you know, they work hard. They never had a voice until I came, meaning over the last long period of time. We call them the forgotten men and women. They were the forgotten. They were very successful. They do a great job. They're smart. They have everything, but they were forgotten by the politicians. They showed up in 16. I think they're going to show up in larger numbers in 20.
And CBN's chief political analyst David Brody joins us now to discuss the big interview. David, first off, great interview. What did you make of the president's answer to that question, whether God put him in office for such a time as this?
Well, you know, I was surprised by it in the sense that it was, wait for it, humble. You know, he said, I hope it's true. I mean, weren't you expecting Donald Trump to say, of course God put me in there for such a time? He didn't say it. He said, I hope it's true. I also thought what was interesting is that this was quintessential Donald Trump. In other words, he said he hopes it's true, and then he goes on to say, look, I'm just burying my head down, trying to get results. Actions speak louder than words. Very much Donald Trump to a T.
David, there was a lot of reporting after the weekend rally that the president was deflated after the disappointing turnout in Tulsa. You've interviewed President Trump many times. I'm curious, what was his temperament when you met him at the White House on Monday?
Right, John. That's a good question. Shockingly, it was really upbeat. I was surprised. As a matter of fact, I saw him not just for the interview, but before the interview, there were a couple spots where we were able to observe, our crew was able to kind of observe him. He did a couple of stand-up interviews with a few other regional affiliates, and he seemed to be in a good mood. And of course, he was in a pretty good mood with us, which I was surprised about. And I can tell you that behind the scenes, what was interesting is we were getting ready for the interview. And then all of a sudden I was ushered over to the Oval Office where President Trump wanted to speak to me. And we spoke for about 10 or 15 minutes inside the Oval Office. No cameras off the record. Just to kind of summarize a little bit, not necessarily what was said, but the tenor of the conversation was about the upcoming election and evangelicals and Biden and Trump and all of that stuff. So yeah, he was in good spirits. And I was really surprised that he was in that good of spirits.
David, just a few seconds left here, but you've interviewed the president many, many times. What struck you about this particular interview?
Well, there are a lot of different things. I mean, but I would just say overall, he was more relaxed than I've ever seen him before, which I thought was interesting considering he's been through impeachment, a global pandemic, and the riots and everything, and the media hurling a lot of stuff at him. So it was interesting to say the least.
All right, David Brody, great interview. We have to leave it there. You can catch more of that interview on CBNnews.com. Thanks, David.
Thanks.
Well, he didn't finish first, but Monday still felt like a win for this NASCAR driver. See sportsmanship at its finest next.
I am Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torresadillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
How'd you like to get a redo on your health, on your body, on your arteries, so you could have the energy you had 20 years ago? The great news is you can. I'm Dr. Mike Roizen, chair of the Wellness Institute at the Cleveland Clinic. I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. But even better than having to read all that, you can listen to this DVD and watch it. Protect your heart? Yes, you can. Here's how.
Go to CBN.com or call 1-800-700-7000 for your free copy of Protect Your Heart. Let the medical experts show you their new discoveries on how to avoid heart disease and even reverse it. Easy steps to uncover the hidden dangers in your medicine cabinet, reduce stress, and get a complete do-over for your health. Call 1-800-700-7000. That's 1-800-700-7000. Or go to CBN.com to claim your free copy of Protect Your Heart.
Finally tonight, a show of solidarity on the racetrack.
Bubba Wallace, the Cup Series' only black driver, found a noose in the track garage hanging above his car Sunday. The following day, he took to the speedway, surrounded by his peers.
All of NASCAR's drivers have rallied around Bubba Wallace. And this was just
I stand with Bubba Wallace on the infield grass before Monday's race, and fans filled the stands in support. Wallace said he's proud that the sport is changing. He also decided not to wear his mask to show that no one can take away his smile.
Yeah, it was an emotional show of support for him. Really nice to see.
Indeed. Well, that's going to do it for Fake Nation.